Life with Liliana and Friends.
Pulavinaka, and thank you for joining us on Life with Liliana and Friends. We are on episode 4 and we have a great conversation that you're going to be part of this evening. But tonight I have my sister-in-law, Siti's wife, who you met Siti a couple of weeks ago, and Maggie's joining us this evening from the UK. Hi Maggie, thank you for making time for Life with Liliana and Friends.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Man, I'm glad you could join us. I'm really happy that you could come on the show. So thank you for that. And look at how beautiful my sister-in-law is.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for asking me to be on.
No problem. So we're going to go right into it because you have quite an unusual story. And before we talk about you and Siti, I wanted to just spend a little time before we get into that, talking about you. So Maggie was born and raised in Canada. Her mom is Canadian, but her dad is from Laos, so she is Fijian. However, she's got a very interesting story of how she came to be in Fiji. So Maggie, I'm not going to take any words out of your mouth. Why don't you give us your story of how this whole situation happened, how you came to be in Fiji?
Yeah, thank you. So I, as you said, I am half Fijian. So my mother is white Canadian. My father is Fijian from Laos. I grew up in a small town, white suburban area, and stuck out like a sore thumb, really. And grew up not knowing much about my culture. My dad, being Fijian, he also stuck out. So I think it was sort of, he kind of himself wanted to fit in and he wanted his child to fit in as well. So he didn't really emphasize culture that much. I kind of grew up not really knowing, like having a bit of an identity thing, sort of not really knowing much about where I came from. And so when I finished university, that's kind of like an opportunity for people to decide, you know, where their life is heading. And I just kind of thought, you know what, I'm going to move back to Fiji. And I'd never been. My dad And I just thought, you know what, like I kind of need to find out who I am. You know, people used to ask me, where are you from all the time? And I'd say, oh, I'm Fijian, like so impressed with myself. And they'd say, oh, Fijian, wow, what does that mean? And like, I really wouldn't know how to answer that question. So I really felt like it was important that I learned about where I was from. And, you know, I have a lot of family in Fiji. My dad has a lot of brothers and sisters. I have brothers in Fiji, so it was time for me to go back and kind of learn about where I was from. So I just kind of picked up and went. Like I just kind of came and just kind of thought, you know, when you're 22, you're so young and dumb. You just kind of go, oh, dang. So that's what I did. Yeah.
That is crazy. That is so brave of you. So tell me, when you got here, like, so when you came, you didn't know anybody. How did you make these arrangements? Like, how did you know where to stay? What did you decide to do first? What did that look like?
Oh, I knew nothing. I stayed at the Holiday Inn and in Suva. I did a bit of research. I found out that Suva was probably the place I wanted to live. I didn't want to live in Nandi. That was too touristy. So I knew I wanted to be in Suva. My dad, you know, he'd lived in Suva. So I thought, okay, this is where I'll start. So, and they came with me. They dropped me off in Fiji. So we stayed at Holiday Inn and we literally like called real estate people and we're like, can we have a house? And we didn't know areas or anything. So they were saying, you know, like, I didn't even know words. Like, I didn't even know, like, areas. Like, someone was like, I was like, where's your house? They'd say, Ladala. And I'd be like, what? Because, like, I didn't understand. I couldn't hear the sounds, like, Ladala. That didn't sound like a word to me. So I was like, well, where is that? Well, what are you saying? And, like, you know, it was.
What planet is that?
Yeah. Yeah, I just didn't know. So, anyway, we ended up finding a house. And then my parents like set me up and it was this bottom flat of this really amazing Indian family who kind of took me in and took care of me. And they had a dog and like really secure area. And it was really nice. But then they just left. And I was just left on my own. And it was so scary. Like, I think I didn't leave my flat for like 2 weeks because I was just so scared. It was I was only 22 and I hadn't traveled. Like, I was not well traveled at all. So I was scared of rain, like the sound of rain in Fiji, like torrential rainstorm. I woke up in the middle of the night. I heard the rain hitting the tin roof, that sound, right? And I was so scared. I thought there was like a storm coming and I didn't know what to do. And I literally cried myself to sleep. So yeah, it was like a rude awakening. But I have loads of family in Fiji, and like in typical Fiji fashion, they found out that I was in Fiji, and they came, and that's how I kind of like got off my feet. They came and they took me out, and I started, like, one of them worked for Suva Volleyball Club, and so then I joined volleyball because they knew I was a volleyball player, and I just started making networks that way.
So just before we go into a break, I want to just touch on that. What is that volleyball like? Because volleyball in Fiji, I can imagine, is very different from volleyball in Canada. And even what you wear to play volleyball.
Oh my gosh, do you know that stuff?
Well, I know that you left behind some of your volleyball shorts and stuff. And I remember looking at it thinking, oh my goodness, was this woman wearing these shorts on the volleyball court? What was that experience like?
So I rock up to my first volleyball practice, and volleyball in Canada is completely different. Like, you show up, and you show up by the way you dress, by the way you act. Like, you have to show off because you have to show that you're like the best and you should play with this team.
Yes.
Oh, I rock up with my little tiny shorts and my high socks and my tight tops, and I'm and the men's volleyball team just stopped. They just stopped. It was so embarrassing, and I had no idea. I thought I was like fitting in. I thought all these people would be like, "Ooh, she's serious. Yeah. She came to play."
Yeah.
But there were a lot of cultural things I had to learn, for sure.
That's awesome. I think we should talk a bit more about that. But let's stop for a quick break first. If you haven't got a cup of tea or coffee or whatever, go and get it. Tell your friends to jump on. You have to get in on this conversation. I'll see you shortly.
Life with Liliana and Friends. Life with Liliana and Friends.
Welcome back. So we're talking to Maggie, my brother's wife, and she's already given us some really interesting facts about her move to Fiji from Canada. So Maggie, we're in Fiji now. You played a little volleyball, you found a place to stay. You may be still a little scared of the rain. So what did you do for money? Like, you came with nothing and didn't know anyone. What was it like finding a job?
Yeah, well, first I had saved up a lot of money because I knew before I came, because I knew that I probably wouldn't be able to work right off the bat, like visa restrictions and stuff like that. So I decided, so my whole thing was about get back to my roots. So I volunteered at Habitat for Humanity. And so this is a small, like, organization. Well, it's quite large actually, but in Fiji it's quite small. And they travel around Fiji and build homes for underprivileged families. And I was in charge of the volunteer outfit. So when people from Australia and New Zealand wanted to come and like do something like this, I would liaise with them and bring them to the village, wherever that was, and build the home within the village. And then we'd stay in the village for like 2 weeks. And I got to travel all around Viti Levu and build these.
Wow, that's perfect.
It was amazing. It was exactly what I had kind of come to do. And so I lived in like Nikelo or like Sawani or like, I think we went up into Namosi, but like, and like different areas. around Fiji, building these homes and living in villages and like having these experiences. And it was exactly what I was after. And I think from there, I kind of started like really embedding into Fiji. And like, like before work, I'd stop at the Chinese shop and get an egg bun and like walk in and it would just, like, and then, people would be eating something and Talanoa and have a cup of tea. And like, it just started becoming like regular to me. And I was learning about cultures. I was learning about the areas. I was learning about the traditions. I was going to bow. I was like doing sevu sevu, doing all this stuff that I never knew anything about. Like, I didn't even know what's a sevu sevu. Like, I never knew any stuff. And all of a sudden I was just being thrown into the deep end. But with family ties, that kind of like got me in there and helped me progress. And so I didn't make any money there. I think that solidified the bond I felt with Fiji. Do you know what I mean? And like, it just pulled me in that much more.
So, that whole experience of you going to all the villages, what are some things that you can remember that surprised you about the culture, about your culture?
And it's like right off the bat, it was that communal, everything is communal. Every of life is communal. And when you come from Canada or like, the UK or wherever, it's so singular. You're looking after yourself. You're looking after your family unit. You don't want anyone coming in. You don't need to take care of anyone else. You make money for your family so you can, it's all this like kind of, it's just you and your family. But in Fiji, it's not like that. Like, people are walking down the street and they're telling you to come and have a cup of tea with them, and they don't know who you are and you don't know who they are. But like, it's this feeling of community. It's this sense of whatever I have, you can have. I'm not bedded to this shirt. Do you want it? Have it. Like, everything is up for grabs and everything is to help someone else. And in the village, whoa, my God, like, comes live at my house for a week and I've never laid eyes on you, and here's a bed and here's some netting and here's some food, and I've never experienced anything like that in my life. And it was just like outpouring of love from nowhere, from absolutely nowhere. And it was just, your heart just goes like
amazing. Yes. It's interesting that it's like almost like you related to it straight away. I guess it's just human nature. Like, regardless of what culture you're from, people respond to that. Like, you respond when there's just a genuine, outpouring of generosity, regardless of how you were brought up or where you came from.
And there's nothing tied to it. There's nothing like, there's no end game. There's no what's in it for you. It's just pure like, oh, you're hungry, here, have a sandwich. Like, oh, I'm eating, you want it? Like, it's it was I think that probably sticks with most people when they come to Fiji. It's rare around the world. I feel like it's rare. I mean, maybe it's because of where I grew up, but you just don't naturally have that. I never did. And Fiji, all anything is about. And it was a
that's it.
Shake up.
Yes. Siddhi and I, we talked about the difference in cultures when you go away and how you want to retain, the best of both cultures. And this is one of the most beautiful things, isn't it, Maggie? I'm glad you pointed that out.
I think it works into the way that I act now. And like, if someone comes into the house, we're just like, what do you want? Like, here's all this stuff. And someone, it's just at work. It's like, if I can help one person, I will. And it always comes back to you. And I think Siddhi operates too in his work, like, does whatever he can for whoever he can. And that stuff always comes back to him in the end. And it's just, I mean, it's beneficial for everyone at the end of the day.
And I guess the developed countries call it paying it forward. Yes, but they do it, but it's a little bit different because you kind of do it with that thought in mind. Okay, it's gonna come back to me, but our culture doesn't think about that at all. It's just kind of like, I'll give it to you, I'll give you the shit off my back, and it's fine. I'm still breathing.
Speaking of cultural things, I remember one time I said to a girl, "Oh my God, your bracelet's so beautiful," and I just meant it to compliment her. Like I just wanted to give her props, and she just she didn't even say anything. She just automatically handed it to me, and I was like, I just wanted to make you. And
wow.
Just like have it. And I mean, there you go. Like that's just no.
Be careful who you compliment in Fiji, right?
Learn that.
Yeah. Or maybe it should be intentional. Like, oh, I like your Jay Hunter pose. That's nice. Okay, Maggie, we're going to take a quick break again, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about city.
Life with Liliana and Friends. Life with Liliana and Friends.
Welcome back, everyone. So, Maggie, we've talked a bit about your experience with the culture, and man, I'm just loving this conversation so far. Now, enter City Pareti into the scene. So how long was it before you met City? How long had you been in Fiji first?
5 or 6 years? 5 years?
Really?
I think 5 years. I think 5.
Okay, but when you came, did you expect to spend 5 years here?
Honestly, I was 23. I really had no plans. Like I just, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go and do this. But I think initially it was like a year and then see how it goes.
So 5 years.
Yeah.
Yes. And so I think, so remember viewers, if you met my brother City, if you watched his show, he lives in the UK. And so he had already been there for a number of years. He comes back for Christmas. Maggie is in Fiji, and they met at the place, I believe, where most romances start, which is Traps, just next to the service station back in our day. But I remember the story of how you met. But anyway, let's talk about, that's for another day off camera when we can have those laughs about that. But what was it like with City? Did you find it easy to get along culturally with him, because he's come from a full Fijian family? What was that like between the two of you?
Easy, I would say initially, just because while he was from a Fijian family, born, raised Fijian, he was living in the UK for like so long. So he had that other side to him, which kind of spoke to me, which I understood. And I think he saw that in me too. So it was quite easy. And I was really attracted to him because he just reminded me of my dad. Like, he's, just all the, he's like, I don't know, how do I put it? He was kind and caring, and like I felt really secure around him. And it just like all those things that I love about my dad, I just felt in City. And maybe that was the Fijian side of things. I don't know, but I just felt really comfortable with him very, very quickly. Yeah. I think as you move on and you're in your relationship longer, then you start seeing those like cultural differences start popping out like everywhere. But initially, you're just sort of like, he's got all these great qualities, like I'm in.
Yes, that's good. I'll ask one thing, because I know one big thing is you mentioned the communal way of living. And while that's a beautiful thing, when there's marriages, sometimes it's difficult to understand, because I know that when City comes back, it's like his family are like, he's here, he's here to see us. And, I can imagine that there must have been some times when there's kind of like, oh, I want to be with Maggie, and then, oh, but my family want me here. So how did you work around that? I mean, that must have been difficult. How did you get around that as a couple?
I didn't feel much pressure, because it wasn't my family who was kind of knocking down the door saying, come home. I think it was City's side that he was getting the pressure. Yes. Your mom and him had a bit of a thing about him not being around enough. Yes. But yes. I think once I started coming around the family and being involved more, and people saw my face, and then it wasn't so hard because I could come around, and it was like, you know, and I'm so happy to be with big families and be at, you know, weddings.
Yes.
So it wasn't actually that hard, actually.
Then very quickly, you're moving to the UK. You're like, yes, going to the UK. Partner of a British Army soldier. And so I can imagine you would have had these ideas of, you know, what it would look like. Tell us. You get off the plane and you're so excited, going to live with City in the UK. What was that like?
Well, I was so excited, just like you said, I was so excited. I was like, oh, you know, because we've been doing long distance for a year. And I was like, you know, at the beginning of a relationship, you're just so in love and you just want to be together.
Yes.
And I was like, I'm packing my bags. I'm going to live with him. It's going to be amazing. We're going to play house. We're going to like cook together. We're going to, like, you know, do all this stuff. So we go to the UK. I, you know, unpack my stuff, and literally within days, he gets a phone call and he's like, oh, Mags, my boss has called. I have to go on course for 2 weeks. See ya. And he's like gone. And I'm like, this new person in a new country, no car, no friends, no family. And I'm just like, I guess I never considered that while my life was completely changing and doing a 360, his was not. His was, you know, he had a career path, had things he had to do, and he still had to do them. Like, but it was great that I was with him, but he still had to go on his courses. And when you go on course, you have to go all over the UK. So he left, and I was just like, oh my gosh, what do I do?
Yes.
And so I think a lot of women or partners of British Army soldiers, they're just on their phone. Like I was just on my phone 24/7, like seeing what everyone was doing in Fiji, messaging everyone in Fiji, like, you know, like I was so sad and isolated and lonely and like, yeah, it's a shock because you think, oh, it's gonna be so great, happy families. And then
yes,
life, they still gotta work. So yeah, that was a shock.
It's interesting because even though you were on your own in Fiji, I don't think you mentioned that you felt that kind of loneliness.
That was different. That was like, I had so much to absorb and so much to take in. And I was on my own for the first time. And I was like 22, like I was so young, you know, you're just kind of like in all over the place and just, but you know, when I came, I was 30. And so you know, I had a clear idea of I thought I had a clear idea of what I was getting into, but when it didn't happen like that, I was like, oh no, what do I do now? It was really, really hard hitting for sure.
Yes, wow. And you know, City's traveled a lot more since then, hasn't he? He's gone away for months at a time.
When I was pregnant, with our first child, with Kian, he was gone the whole pregnancy. He was in Iraq. And I was pregnant, first ever pregnancy, all by myself. And
it ties in nicely with what Mom said, because Mom can relate to that. And you know what, Maggie, we've run out of time. So engrossed in this conversation, we're out of time already, but I know we've still got more of the story to talk about. So we're going to come back next week and finish this off and talk about coming back to Fiji, which is an interesting thing for us to chat about. But thank you. And to our viewers, thank you for joining us. Please come back next week for part 2 of this great conversation, 8 p.m. on my TV. I will see you there.
Life with Liliana and Friends.